Hey everyone. When we last met, we were talking briefly about sort of the East African trading kingdoms, the Swahili city states. You looked at Aksum and kind of their participation in trade on the Indian Ocean trade complex. Today we're kind of shifting our focus on over to the Americas. Right? Unit 7 deals with life in Africa, life in the Americas, and eventually sort of the encounter and the interaction between cultures in Afro-Eurasia, Africa, Europe, and Asia, and the Americas. So I think something that's really important to understand with regarding the impacts that this interaction between what we would know as the old world, so Afro-Eurasia, and the new world, the Americas, in order to kind of understand the impacts of this interaction, we need to understand what life was like in the Americas prior to this interaction. So in order to understand change, we need to know the way things were and the way things are in order to understand what has changed. So today we'll be examining specifically a society in what would be sort of southern Mexico, the Yucatan Peninsula, and I'll show you a map on the next slide here, and that's the Maya civilization, or the Mayans. And I want you just to think about this image I've put here on the right. So think about if you are an explorer who came across this monument, and you've seen structures like this in the past, you're kind of familiar with their purpose, but I want you to make some inferences as to what you might think about the civilization that built this structure. And we can tell a lot about a civilization based upon the structures they build, right? Something like this might show something that they value, right? So, for example, this structure is a pyramid that served a religious purpose. At the top, you can see what looks to be or appears to be a temple. So this would, make us led to believe that religion or religious rituals were important to this civilization, right? And that's some kind of clues that historians can use to determining what a civilization values is what types of monuments do they build. The buildings, the large structures are important. They're built to represent important aspects of that civilization. So I think when you look at this image on the right here, you can definitely see that religious rituals had a big place in this society, but more so, you have to have a pretty high level of architectural knowledge in order to build something like this. Right? So in order to build a structure like this, it means that the government needs to be relatively strong, and you need to have people who have knowledge of architecture. So the geographic context of what you're looking at today, if you take a look in the shaded region here, this is the Mayan homeland, located in sort of southern Mexico, Central America. And you can see if you've ever been on vacation to Mexico to like Cancun or Playa del Carmen, that's on the Yucatan Peninsula, which was the heart of the Mayan homeland. So today, this is the region of the world that you're going to be kind of looking at. And again, we're shifting our focus to the new world, the Americas, and we're going to see kind of what life was like in this region prior to Europeans encountering Native Americans. So the Maya Golden Age, it was a pretty long, drawn out time period here. So the Mayan civilization started about 1,500 years before Common Era, so before the year zero, until approximately 1530 Common Era, so after the year zero. So we're looking at 1,500 years before zero to 1,500 years after zero. That's about 3,000 years was how long the Mayan civilization was around. So the Spanish, we'll talk about the encounter between the Mayans and the Spanish going forward. But the Spanish, when they colonized this area, it's going to have devastating impacts on the Mayans and eventually lead to a downfall in the Mayan civilization. So the classical period from about 250 CE to 900 CE, so 250 years after the year zero to 900 years after the year zero, is considered the Mayan Golden Age. So really the height of the Mayan civilization, their peak. So the Maya were not united under one government. And if you take a look over here on the right, you can see a bunch of different, sites of Mayan civilization. These were what's called city-states, meaning that they were run independently, but they would pay tribute to a larger Mayan government. So it was sort of like a loose confederation making up this empire. I think of it like, kind of like the United States, where we have individual states, but also a larger overarching federal government. you can say that there are a little bit of similarities between what we see in Mayan city-states and sort of our government today. The similarities might not be exact, but the themes are there. So during the classic period, the city-states generally prospered. This was a good time, a golden age for Mayan civilization. When you have a golden age, usually there's an increase in trade. You have building of artwork and impressive large structures and advancements in science and technology. And the advancements that we see in Mayan civilization really were on par or rivaled what we see in more interconnected or more, more interactive societies in Afro-Eurasia. So while the Mayans were, quote unquote, cut off from Afro-Eurasia, the achievements and the developments are still there. So the Mayan civilization would eventually fall due to warfare, Spanish conquest, drought, and overpopulation. And we'll get back to that kind of as we go forward. Don't get too caught up on that right now. But your goal for today is to examine the Mayan Golden Age, to examine what the Mayan civilization was all about, the achievements of the Mayan civilization, so that we can understand the effects after the encounter with Europeans. Right? So you're going to be doing a little bit of a digital gallery walk today. All of the files that you need are located in your folder for today. It's folder 7.3. And examine one of the great, Mesoamerican civilizations in their golden age prior to their encounter with Europeans.